Welcome, everybody, to the Grizzled War Masters Podcast to Glory, Episode 8. I'm Mike, and I'm here with special guest James Howze. You're filling in for Doug. How's it going, James?
Hello. How's it going?
Yeah, it's we have a special episode today. One, because Doug's not here, and we're going to take over. So that's exciting in and of itself. But also because we're going to review the Orruk Warclans Battle Tome. So I'm excited about that. We're not going to mess with any news or, anything like that. We're going to jump right into reviewing this Battle Tome because I'm super excited about it.
Do we have to start with an obligatory wah in order to get started?
I think we should. I think that's it's called for.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Wah! Ah!
Absolutely. So we have. Let's see here. Pull up the Orruk Warclan Battle Tome, and the way we're going to break this down is, I am going to go over all the Cruel Boys stuff, and James is going to be getting over the Bone Splitters and the Iron Jaws. Since you're a little more familiar with the old stuff.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, but I think you got a good section here. I think there's some very juicy tidbits.
There is some good stuff here, and I'll pull up some war scrolls when we get closer to that. Some of the pages here, but yeah, let's dive into it. Let's talk about Cruel Boys here. So, Cruel Boys, not only on the cover, they are the newest of the Orc Warclans, and they've got some nice toys. So they are the sneakiest of the Orcs tribes. They use all sorts of poisons and dirty tricks in order to gain advantage in battle. So as opposed to the outright, usually you play Orcs, everybody knew, you're going to charge forward and beat face. Smash and bash. That was but now we got slightly sneakier Orcs. So the first main army ability for Cruel Boys was the Venom Encrusted weapons. So we saw this before. Unmodified 6 deals mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon, which it can't be banked on, but it can be manipulated in order to make some, particularly nasty weapon combinations to, bypass wounding and save rolls because they don't have a whole lot of rend in the list, but it kind of makes up for it with the poison weapons.
Yeah, and I think that ability is really what makes them a competitive army in the current meta. If they wouldn't have had this ability, I think we'd be looking at a C tier army that it just really struggles to put out damage on the table.
Yeah, I agree 100% because they're they're low end. Their basic troops are cheap, but they are, they don't have the damage output that some of the others do. So, they have their own special wall. Like everybody has their own wall, which is great. And I think the Cruel Boys ended up with one of the better ones. It's not, you don't have to bank up points. You don't have to build points up for it. But at one point during the game, the Warlord and 2 selected units can fight in succession during a fight. Allowing them to bypass the alternating, back and forth. Who goes? You can fight with 3 units at once. So if you line up those monsters or your heavy hitters, or your empowered poison weapons, having 3 units fight in a phase is pretty good. And then finally, they have dirty tricks, which is a rule that allows them to pick one of 4 abilities at the start of the game. And these abilities are stuff like subtract 1 from wound rolls against you in the first battle round, or booby traps. You can booby trap terrain. You can pick up to 3 terrain features or objectives that cause D6 mortal wounds when people get near them. You can choose D3 enemy units to start deployed off the board and have to, come back on the board. So that could really mess up, those turn ones. You could basically make stuff, take them out of whatever battle plan they had in turn 1. So I think that's probably one of the most powerful ones there. And then you can make up to 3 units invisible, whether in cover. So, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, I think the first two allegiance abilities really make them a strong force, and I think this third one here adds the flavor that you really like to see in an army. That gives you that little extra. Oh, I remember this one rule. That's really cool that I like to do.
Yeah, it was back. I think it was like was a goblin character back in the old fantasy rules that did this. You kind of like you had to roll for each unit to see whether they started on the board or started in reserves with the sneaky tricks. But so it's like a callback to that. It's pretty awesome. There's also 3 sub factions in each one of these lists here, and so for the Cruel Boys, we've got Grinning Blades are basically invisible the first round. And the great thing about these sub clans is they don't alter too much. They give you basically one or two bonus abilities, but you don't have to build your army around them like you would in the past, right? So you still get, you don't lose anything. You just kind of gain, what extra ability you're going to get. Right. So for Grinning Blades, they get to be invisible for the first round of battle if they're more than 12 inches away from enemy models, ensuring that you're all your shooters or your guys sneaking back there, you're not going to get fired upon in the first round, more likely. The Big Yellows, which I think is probably the best of them, just because its ability is not as dependent. They get extra. They get extra range. They get extra 3 inches on their ranged weapons. They can reroll hits of 1 in the first battle round, and they make your Manskewer Bolt Boys battle line. So they have the most that are useful pretty much all the time. Abilities as where the other ones are kind of 1 round or whatever. And then Skull Bugs, the third one, they're infested with creepy crawlies, and they on a 6 they subtract 1 from hit rolls in melee, or for monsters a 4+ they subtract it. So it's very situational and not a guarantee. So Grinning Blades, only in the first round with their ability. Skull Bugs, situational, and you have to roll for it. I think Big Yellows are the winners here out of the sub clans, as they have one thing that goes away after the first battle turn, but the rest is for the whole game. So,
yeah, I agree.
Let's see here, and just like in the Stormcast book that came out, each clan also gets their own enhancements. So for the command traits for the Cruel Boys, you get to pick from being able to, things like retreat and charge, redeploy a Cruel Boys unit anywhere on the battlefield, and gain the ability to pass wounds off to nearby units, which I think is the clear winner of those. Although that counts as a ward save nowadays with the new updates. So
yeah, but Cruel Boys doesn't really have a whole lot of mortal wound negation anyways. So
right.
I think this gives you a chance to take that command trait for the pass off, and then also take the artifact on a different hero to give you like 2 separate heroes with a mortal wound save.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the Cruel Boys artifacts, they get 4 unique artifacts, but my nitpick here is that pretty much every single one of them is just once per game. Right? So like the first one, throwing sand in your eyes, basically. It has a chance of reducing your chance to hit a unit by 1 for the rest of the game, but it also has an equal chance of doing nothing. So you got to roll for that one. 1 to 2 does nothing. 3 to 4, it's -1 for the round. 5 to 6, it's -1 for the game.
Yeah, it seems like a subpar option when it's once per game. It's a chance it doesn't happen, and it's easily countered by a command point. Yeah. So, I mean, you're not getting a whole lot out of this, when I would almost say you'd be more beneficial with the amulet, off of your the general enhancements to give you that 5-up ward save.
Yeah, I mean, none of these are pretty much going to replace the generic 5+ ward save amulet, because this next one is a 5+ ward save, and it's got the bonus of all units within 12 inches, but again, it's for 1 round, right? As where you're going to put your guy on the troll, give him the amulet, and have him run out there and beat face. So then they also have an item that deals 2d6 mortal wounds to a target monster. like poison gruel. So I just, I love think of the idea of giving the gash tainted candy. There you go. But again, you got to roll for it. It's one-time use. And the last one, you got a one-use. So one-use model that can. So a model can cause mortal wounds to a unit that charges the bearer. Basically, it's caltrops. Basically, you throw them out there. So it's very situational. And again, one time. I don't think there's anything in here that I would take over the generic 5+ word save amulet.
Now the Beast Killer Slop, which is the 2d6 mortal wounds to a monster on a 6, reminds me a lot of the Eye of Nurgle, which is in the Maggotkin tome. And once per game, you get to roll, and if you roll a 7, you slay the nearest enemy model. And I'm like, okay, so maybe it happens, but most of the time it doesn't do nothing. Right. That's kind of what I feel about with this. Like maybe once per game, it does something, but most of the time it doesn't. Right.
Exactly. And it's just one of those things like, well, it's kind of cool in thought, but in practice, I don't think it's going to be, it's going to do as much. So, but where Cruel Boys make up for the lack of fancy artifacts, they make up for it in spells. So they've got some great spells here. So they've got the Black Pit. It's a really nasty spell where you roll a die for each model in the target unit and causes a mortal wound for each 6. Each 6 or over their save value. So low armored units, or actually the high armored units are going to be taken, or get sucked down in the pit. The heavier armor you're wearing, the more you're going to get sucked down.
Yeah, this screams Stormcast meta. We're all over it.
Yeah, this is where you go and decimate a Stormcast unit. This is your spell. Choking Mist is a 6-inch bubble. Lets you reduce attack characteristics of melee weapons by 1. It's all right. Sneaky Miasma allows you to make a normal move with Cruel Boy monster, for getting them up in the battlefield, you're moving the magic in the hero phase, getting up there. And then one of the greatest, Nasty Hex, basically shuts down ward saves. I mean, that's a big one. A lot of armies are kind of built around this ward save. And thanks to the new FAQ updates, that includes shuffling off the bodyguards. So it's one spell does it all.
Yeah. The only weakness to this is with a lot of power inside of the spell lore for Cruel Boys, you're going to have some struggling against some of the top armies like Tzeentch and Lumineth. Yeah. It's going to be difficult to get that, to deliver that. I know, and they want to shoot. Cruel Boys want to shoot, and it's going to be difficult to deliver a full level of output with your spells being shut down.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at some of the core battalions that are going to come in here. And again, I'm not overly impressed with these core battalions. I think the base ones in the core rulebook are better. Have some better options here, but each clan gets one. Iron Jaws gets one, Cruel Boys gets one, Bone Splitters gets one. The Cruel Boys one we're looking at now, it gets the extra command point. And I mean, you could easily get the one with, the extra Magnificent and the Strategist. What's that? I forget the name of that one, but it's as a core rule book. Much better. The Warlord,
right?
The Warlord. I don't know.
Yeah, the Warlord one. The thing is, like, the thing is with with the Cruel Boys one, it seems like the problem I find when I play, and I play a lot of games, is when I pick up something about a core battalion with like a strategist, which is a once per battle, I forget it. Yeah. Like if I'm not using it now, I will remember if I get like a free all out attack or something like that. Because it becomes critical to like my strategy. But if I have to beginning of the hero phase, do I need an extra command point? I don't know, maybe, but I'm not going to remember it.
I always forget the extra command point. I always forget the Swift. Yeah, the free move. I always forget it. I remember the the extra enhancement because I picked that. I get to pick that in the beginning, so I like picking those battalions as lets me remember. So again, people were worried about like, oh, they're going to get they pared down all the core battalions and now they're actually going to start putting them back in the books. Well, so far I think they either fix some things like they did with the Sons of Bayonet core battalions, or they're just kind of like these here. So, but let's look at some of the hotness here. Gobsprack is as close to an auto include as you can get in his army. He's an animal here. Big monster, awesome model on his big vulture. 14 wounds, but he's got the fact that some of his best abilities, like Mork says no, right? So he can dispel, causing mortal wounds if he dispels with more than a 10 plus. Multiple mortal wounds. I mean, and he's got once per battle he can do the Screaming Mandrake, which lets him dispel with 3d6. An average roll of 3d6 is 10.2, so he's going to get the more likely he's going to get the extra wounds. So 3 mortal wounds or d6 mortal wounds. So he's going to get that d6 mortal wounds. So smaller wizards, that's a danger, and because being able to shut down some spells is nice, or make them think. They're going to make wizards think, when he's on the table here.
Yeah, and he's an amazing model, and I mean, he's got great mobility. He's not terrible in combat, though I don't think you ever really want him there. No. He's got a 6-up ward for, it give you something for those shooting attacks as well as for that long range mortal wound output some armies have. This guy at 300 points, I mean, how could you not want him as a centerpiece for your Cruel Boys army?
Yeah, I mean, he's as close to an auto include as it gets. He knows he can cast 2 spells, unbind 2 spells. He knows all the spells in the swamp floor. I mean, you can't go wrong there. Plus, he's got if he's the one issuing some of these commands, they're extra. So if this unit issues a redeploy command, the unit can reroll the dice that determines how far they go.
Has he got the monster keyword?
He does have the monster keyword.
Oh, good. So then you can also use him for some of those monster battle traits to get you those extra points.
Yep, absolutely. If he issues an Unleash Hell command, you don't get the -1.
Very nice.
You throw him in obviously in the big yellows where they got the extra range. I'm telling you, he can do some damage on here. But yeah, great model. Now you can also build him as a killer boss on this vulture here. Not quite as good, but he gets just like other killer bosses, he gets the all part of the plan. So you only lose maximum of 1 Cruel Boy when they break. But he's got the commanding view, which is an awesome ability. It gives you can use the same command ability more than once. Right. So imagine Unleash Hell multiple times.
Yeah. I think this guy at 14 wounds with a 4-up save, you can make him a 3-up ignoring 1, real easy. He's fast, starts out with a 14-inch move. He's
Plus
got
some enhancement and command traits.
Yeah.
He's not a named character.
Exactly. And he's only 240 points. I mean, that is a very solid monster hero in any army that I know of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard. If this model wasn't $140, I'd be like trying to get them both in my list. But as it is, I got to go with Gobsprack on this one. But yeah, he's definitely worth it. Now, as opposed to Swamp Boss Scumdrack. Now, this is the one option where and we'll show you when we get to the other option to build. I would actually take the generic boss over this guy for what you get. You only saving 5 points, but it's because he does most of the things this boss does. The one thing, this model, it gives you extra poison, right? So if you roll your 6 on your poison attacks, you do an extra damage. So that is awesome right there. And once per, he can snatch somebody, up to like 7 wounds, just off the board. Some of these smaller heroes or wizard models, he just snag, you're gone. The only thing this one has over the generic version, it's got 1 more wound, and it does 1 more damage with his base weapon. The monster does the same amount of damage, same stats. The monster has the same Venom ability. It's got the same snatch and grab ability. This one has a Bet Master, which to me is almost like a drawback, because the way this is, you have to pick. You have to take a Hobgrot Slitters unit, to be the Bet Master, and you got to bet on one of your units dying first. And if you're correct, you get an extra triumph. Right? Not worth it, in my opinion. 1, it makes you take Hobgrot Slitters. You have to take 1. And 2, at 5 less points, you get this guy here, the Snatcher Boss, who's got all the same cool abilities. He's only 5 points cheaper, so you're not saving a whole lot. But he's got the abilities you want. He's got the extra Venom. He's got the Snatch and Grab. And you can give this guy artifacts and command abilities.
Yeah, I think people might sleep on the Snatch and Grab here. And I've still seen, especially in like Soulblight Gravelords and some other lists, where people are doing that very precarious screening where they'll set up with a full line, 2 models at the end to keep coherency. All you need is one of these guys. You see that screen at early, pop that middle unit, and then that half of that unit's gone. You just freed up your charge lanes,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, collectively, exactly. With the coherency, just being able to snatch those key players out of there, that's important. But I think this guy here is going to be the must include in almost every destruction list here, right? This guy, this Marsh Crawler Slogoff, on his own, he's all right. He does, he's got a lot of little grots in there. They don't do, they're 4+4+, 1 damage, no rend. His claws are 3+3+, -1 rend, 2 damage, so a little bit better. He's got 12 wounds, but he doesn't degrade. They've got a kind of like a lower end snatch and grab, kind of not quite as good as the other one, but still, they have to roll double the wounds to snatch somebody. So up to 3 wound model they can snatch. And it's not once a game. This is at the end of the combat phase. So every combat phase they can snatch somebody. Again, with the coherency rules the way they are, that could be a major thing in a unit. They regenerate because it's a troll, but the key thing about this guy here is he adds 1 to hit rolls in a 18-inch bubble for friendly units, not Kruleboy units, not Orruk units, friendly units. We're going to see this guy in Ogar Maw tribes and in the Goblin lists.
Yeah, he's 150 points, and you get an aura of +1 hit instead of having to spend command points on it. Mm-hmm. I definitely see more play in him outside of Kruleboys.
Yeah.
Inside of Kruleboys, because it's only melee weapons and you're going to be range heavy. I don't know if he brings his value, but in a big wall list, I definitely see him being a very strong contender.
In a big wall list, or like you said, in other destruction lists. Yeah, not as much as the Kruleboys, but yeah, I agree with you 100% on this guy. 150 points. And the fact that it's an 18-inch bubble, right?
Yeah.
That's
and 12 wounds on a 4-up for 150 points is bargain.
Yeah.
Even if he does nothing but sit on an objective or block a lane, that's still a bargain.
Yeah. And the fact that he doesn't degrade over 10 wounds and doesn't go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a cool model.
Oh yeah. He's one of the cooler ones for sure.
All right. So all right. So that's some of the big monster ones we have here. We've seen the guy on the troll, right? Who he's he has a max. He could pump out 40 wounds at max. I mean, it's unlikely, but the fact that he has a shot at pumping out 40 wounds.
Oh, you'll be hearing about it if it happens. If it happens to like an Archeon or something, and that guy's going to tell everybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're going to hear it. If it happens at a tournament somewhere. Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, but I mean, anything that can like take down a Mega Gargant.
Yeah.
That's thing's pretty nasty. It's only got a 5 movement, but you've got lots of tricks in your book to, kind of get to play around with it. Get them out there, sneak them out there. You can redeploy him close by, and then have them. They got the covered in mud ability where you can't target them if they're in cover. And then just have them pop out.
I'd say Cruel Boys have some deceptive power projection that people are not going to be ready for when they first hit the table. Like their strengths to me, from what I'm seeing, is that pregame moves, that ambushing ability, drop your shooters right at max range on some key pieces inside the enemy units. Turn 1, hit them with everything, kill a lot of the synergy, and I think you're in a great spot then sitting on an objective or something with some of your other bigger pieces that are cheap to really run away with the game while people have to decide, all right, I've got, this line of shooters over here on my left flank. I've got this monster on the right flank scoring all these points on this objective. What am I going to go at right now? Because I've already lost a quarter of my army to the first round of shooting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those, it's going to be, just can do deceptively well. However, it's also a little bit of a paper tiger, a little glass cannon. It can't take the punishment once they get in there, and some of these, it relies on a lot of synergy. You have to have a lot of things working together, and if one of those or a couple of those fail, right? If you get some bad rolls on some things, your whole plan could fall apart pretty quickly.
Yeah, you want to go first with them. You don't want to get double turned. If stuff starts going bad for you, it's going to go bad, very bad, very quick.
It's going to go very bad. Exactly. And I mean, you gotta kind of look at, well, I mean,
I would say, like, I know that this army's going to pull in a lot of new players, but I'd almost caution them, because you're going to look at this and there's some fantastic models that are beautiful. And it's going to be I feel like we're going to be looking at the same thing with like the Lumineth Realm Lords. Beautiful models, great lineup, but bought in a lot of new players who then got in and started trying to pick apart these pieces and didn't realize how much level of effort goes into running those armies at the top tier.
Yeah. If you're used to your typical orcs, running forward and, smashing and bashing, it's a little more nuanced. This is to run a Cruel Boys list, and take a little more strategy in there. But you look at some of the points here, on these things here, and it's, obviously Gobsprack's 300, 240 for the Killer Boss and the Corpse Ripper, 320 for Scumtrek, or 315 for the Snatcher Boss. But have you noticed that pretty much everything has come down in price since Dominion on a Cruel Boys list?
Yeah, I don't see anything here to me that looks like it's too much.
Yeah.
Like if I'm making a list, depending on the army and the synergies, I might be able to find a spot for everything. It's just, it really is probably one of the better costed armies that we've seen. I mean,
absolutely.
Stormcast are kind of in the same realm. Obviously, we've seen some of their points as well, but I think these guys are right there with them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that. I mean, the only thing that stayed the same is Gut Ripper stayed 180, and the Bolt Boys stayed 120. Everything else dropped in price.
Yeah.
Hobgrass Slitters are still not worth it at 80, but I just want to point out, this is the list I put together quickly. I do have Hobgrass Slitters in there just because I painted them up. That's what I have, and I had the extra points, so I get even there. But I noticed on my list I took here, I don't have any of those heroes that I painted up from the Dominion box. There's just better options, with the price. And I had to get 2 of the Killbows in there. Beast Skewer Killbows, do 12 damage.
You're wanting to roll for luck there. You're like, come on, make it happen. Big damage.
Yeah, pretty much. I got those for Gargants. Pretty much. That's pretty much a guaranteed 12 wounds on a Gargant. Plus, I want to roll that many dice. I think that. That would be fun. So, but okay, so there we have it, Cruel Boys. Let's take a look at Bone Splitters. Now, you've got a much nicer presentation than I do here. That's where I'm like, let's look at some pictures and talk about it, but that's all right because we've got pull it up here. All right.
Bone Splitters. Yeah, one of my favorite armies. I love this army. I love the look of it. I love to paint Bone Splitters. Some of the strengths that we see in this book, I think, is they still retain a lot of the high wounds that they had previously. Everything has at least 2 wounds on it, and they're cheap wounds too. We're going to see that army-wide 6-up ward save is still with the army, which is great.
Yep.
A strong wall for defensive abilities in the combat phase. I wish GW here would have given you the choice, though, between the combat phase or the shooting phase to pop your wall, because I really think that would have pushed this army way up in competitiveness. Because if you can pop your wall, maybe turn 1 or turn 2 when you're expecting the biggest brunt of the shooting and get your 4-up out of it, I think that just is, that's loads above what you're going to get out of melee.
As you're charging across the board,
right?
Plus,
withering
the onslaught of arrows and then hitting them.
Yeah, exactly. And then they kept their pregame move, which is fantastic. I mean, a lot of people underestimate that, but being able to screen out a lot of shooting armies that want to turn 1, like Cruel Boys and Cadron Overlords, that pregame move is really nice to have.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Some of the weaknesses, low bravery. So when these guys get hit, they get hit and they want to run away. So you're going to need command points, or you're going to need to be able to stagger how you lose your forces, because if you're losing too many units, too many models and too many different units, you're going to lose some. They're going to run away.
Yeah.
I would also say similar to 2.0 and 3.0, they're kind of reliant on their magic to really have the damage output that they need to be competitive. And we'll go over the spells.
Luckily their shamans are cheap.
Yeah, their casters are cheap, but they're also easy to kill.
Yeah.
So you got that trade-off. I mean, how many do you need to bring to be competitive to make sure you're getting the spells off that you need?
Yeah.
They have no hero monsters. So what's big right now, they're just not bringing it. The only monster they have is the Rogue Idol. They can bring in a Gargant. And I think he is definitely probably an auto include in this army.
Yeah.
Just to give you some objective control. But then, they also have weak heroes. Their heroes are very fragile. So any synergies that you have with this army, you need to just consider losing it very quickly inside of your battle, because anything blows bad in their direction, they're going to crumble very quickly.
Yeah. And they don't have the Cruel Boys Kiloboss unit to minimize the amount of people running away from failed battle shock.
Yep. All right. Command traits for the Savage Big Boss, who is probably the most mediocre hero I've ever seen. They give him a whole 3 command traits to choose from. The only one I think worth even mentioning here is the pregame move to an 8-inch instead of a 5-inch. being able to move faster, further up the board, get on an objective. An 8-inch move will put you on an objective that's out in contested territory turn 1 before the game even starts. So, and the way that GW does objective control on turn 1, you gain control of that objective at the start of the first player's turn. So if you have your pregame move, you move out onto those middle objectives, you've already gained control of those objectives before the game's even started. And then the wizard ones, the extra spell's nice, but you can just take an enhancement. Why would you take a command trait? And then as well as with the command within 24 instead of 18. I mean, it just doesn't seem worth it for. If you have to pick one, I would take the pregame move out of all of these.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of stands out when you look at the rest.
Yeah. For the artifacts, the one here that I think everybody should be careful of, and we'll talk about a synergy with this, but we might as well talk about it now. The glowing tattoos. So if you put this on your Wargog Prophet, he has an ability where he can roll a dice for a unit within, I think it's 12 inches. And every time he rolls the dice on a 1 to 3, he does D3 mortal wounds to himself. But on a 4, 5, and 6, he does D3 mortal wounds to another unit. And so if you popped this, if you give him this artifact, he's now got a 4-up shrug. You could probably, before you kill him, he could probably do something like 14 mortal wounds to a unit. And that's nothing to scoff at.
No.
So, I mean, he blows his brains out basically doing as many mortal wounds as he can.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, nothing in here really that I think it is that great. Even the wizard ones are very situational, and it's just not nothing stands out to me other than glowing tattoos. I think every Bone Splitter's army you'll see will be running glowing tattoos on something.
Yeah, 4+ shrug is just on a hero is just it's hard to pass up.
All right, spells. So the spells here are actually pretty good, except for like the first one. So the first one, you're going to do D3 mortal wounds to a hero. If you slay it, you get +1 to cast for the rest of the game. It's got to be a hero within 3 inches.
Yeah.
So if your hero is within 3 inches to cast this spell, I mean, you've done something terribly wrong.
Something's gone wrong. Yeah.
So that you should almost never take. The glowing green tusk is really what brings this army together, and it's going to be the bread and butter for it going forward. And CV5 isn't hard to get off. The problem's going to be who can deny it. What bonuses do they have to stop the spell? Because you need this spell. You need this spell to go off every single turn, or you're going to have a very difficult time putting out enough damage.
That's a techless auto deny right there.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you're against techless, you might as well consider your army swinging at like a quarter of its potential.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. You throw that on a 10-man unit of boar boys, and they're just wrecking anything they touch. Gorkamorka's War Cry is it's great. It's also a great spell. I mean,
yeah.
Glowing green tusks are the damage. Gorkamor's War Cry is how you stay alive.
Yeah.
I mean, this spell is going to let you hit with everything before it hits back at you. And then the power of the Werebear, also great because it's wholly within 24 inches, +1 to run and charge and to hit but they can't shoot. But most of the time, you're casting this on your boar boys, like turn 1 or turn 2, so that they're hitting in and they're hitting hard.
Yeah.
All right. So the clan abilities for the Bone Splitters, the Bone Grins. So the +1 attack missiles by Arrow Boys probably sounds good, but the thing is, like, Arrow Boys are not that good anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say Arrow Boys.
They were very bad. I mean, they won't say they're bad. They were better when you could take multiple units and get to that extra attack. Because if you were 15 or more, you used to be able to get that extra attack for 3 attacks each. So now you have to take a clan for it. Also, you could get them to shoot twice because they were shooting in the hero phase and then they were shooting in the shooting phase. And that's really what you needed in order to make that unit worth its points.
Yeah.
It's five. It's, right now they're base two shots each, 5s and 4s. You're just not getting any damage output with that.
With
Even
5s
on
and
a
4s,
monster.
you need buckets of shots.
Yeah. So Icebone is, I think, the auto include in this. This is the one that everybody will be running. Unmodified wound rolls of 6 on a melee weapon does mortal wounds. So this paired up with their other allegiance ability, which is 6s to hit, give you extra attack when you have 5 or more models, plus then 6s to wound, give you mortal wounds, and that's really what is going to put this army over. So you get your 10 boar boys, you buff them up with -2 rend, you throw them in on their traits. They're gonna you can give them their 4-up ward save with the wah. They're going to get extra attacks with their 6s, and then their 6s to do mortal wounds, and then everything else is going to hit with -2 rend. Is just they're going to be, I think, point for point right now, they're actually better than Ideneth Eels, which is saying a lot.
I was going to say, yeah, that's
all the lists that I've been building for this. I mean, you take your mega, you take your buff bots, and then you just slam in as many boar boys as you can fit in the list. And that's really what you're running right now.
Yeah.
And then the Drakfoot, enemies don't get a ward save. It's just, I feel this feels bad because that Cruel Boys get a spell to do this, but you got to take a whole clan to do it.
Yeah.
And it's so situational. Like, the spell is good because it's situational. You only got to take the spell.
Yeah.
But when you're giving up Iceborne for Drakfoot,
when you're giving up the Iceborne for Drakfoot, it's kind of because when you look at it, because the first time I read it, I was like, okay, that is amazing. Then I started thinking about it like you did, right? Where the Cruel Boys get to pick where they're when and where that's happening, and they don't have to give up anything for it. Is where, man, giving up that mortal wounds on 6s is rough.
Yeah. It's just, in comparison to Icebone, it just doesn't stand up.
Yeah.
All right. So some units of note. I already talked about it, but the Wargog Prophet, take the artifact and blow your brains out doing mortal wounds to a unit.
Yep.
That cocky, hero that decides to run at you turn 1, that zombie lord, Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. I'm just going to do 14 mortal wounds and blow my brains out. Savage Boar Boys, 12-inch move, 5 attacks each. Iceborne on them gives mortal wounds.
Yeah.
They're like 3 wounds each. It's just huge value. They're super cheap. Yeah. They're fast.
Iceborne with 5 attacks each is
it's just nasty. And then you give them the +1 to hit from their spell. So then they're hitting on 3s and 2s. I mean, the things buffed up boar boys are just going to be super nasty to deal with if you have to run into them.
Or run a marsh crawler behind them.
Yeah, for sure. Savage Arrow Boys, not as good anymore. I would definitely be taking those and putting them on my shelf. 2 attacks, 5s, 4s, no rend, -1 damage. There's no way to get extra shots anymore. It's just a hard no right now for me. It's just for point wise. And then we look at Sons of Bayonet. I think it's still a great choice in this army to give you a great monster hero that's going to hold objectives for you.
And you can take any of them in destruction. So you're not limited. All right. Iron Jaws.
Iron Jaws. Rah. Wah.
Wah.
All right. Strengths, mobility. These guys have mobility for days. Mighty Destroyers. Commanded traits to give them Mighty Destroyers. For those who don't know, Mighty Destroyers gives you a free 12-inch move in the hero phase, or it lets you charge a unit, or lets you pile in. They have high rend with their wah. So most of their stuff is -1, and that can be deceiving if you're not ready for it, because all of a sudden they wah, and now they're -2 rend on everything. And it's a big deal because they're also going to be buffing up all their damage with War Chanters. So now all their Gore Grunters are -2 rend, 2 damage a pop, and that is very fearsome when they're hitting you.
Going from -1 to -2 rend is a big deal.
Oh yeah,
that is
sure.
a big deal. I mean, -3 obviously is really great, but when you get that from 1 to 2 really makes a difference with red.
Oh yeah. And then the fight next off of Smashin' and Basha. Smashin' and Bashin' is it catches a lot of people off guard. They're not ready for it.
It does.
And I think that this list now does it better because of if you take a Megaboss, he can multiply your Mighty Destroyer off of Gore Grunter units. And then you can move a wall. You can move your Mega Crusher for free with the Mighty Destroyer and its command trait. I mean, it's just there's so much mobility. If you ever sit down across the table from this and you're like, they won't be in my face turn 1, you are sorely mistaken. You need to expect this. You need to expect the entire army to be in your line turn 1 and be ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, weaknesses, very low shooting. So if you're able to weather the storm, you can start pecking away at this army. If you can piecemeal it, if you can string them out across the battlefield, they don't have any power projection other than their mobility. And that's strong, but it's counterable because you can use terrain, you can use some of your screening units. And that kind of comes into the next 2 points. They're very one-dimensional. You know what you're going to do when you deal with Iron Jaws. They're going to do one thing. They're going to do it really well. But as long as you're able to plan for it, I think you're going to find that the second point, it's easy to counter them, and they're going to have a hard time dealing with it. So when you actually counter them, Iron Jaws have a hard time responding. It's a very one-dimensional force. It just does it really well, and it works. But if it doesn't, then it doesn't work very badly.
Right. A well-placed prismatic palisades could really wreck your plans. But
all right. Next slide. All right. Command traits here. The Mega Bossy is really the standout on this one. A Mighty Destroyer for free if it's already been issued. So if you run 2 cabbages, you can send them both across, or if you run 1 cabbage, sends him across with Mighty Destroyer. Then you use the Mega Boss, who gets to pick 2 other units to do the Mighty Destroyer. Pick like 2 Gore Grunter units. They fly across the table. It's great. It's just amazing. I mean, out of all of these, it's the standout winner, I think, for most people. The rest of them are okay. There's just nothing in here that I would take over that.
Yeah, you don't issue another Mighty Destroyer. I mean,
like
almost all these lists has one clear winner in it. But yeah.
All right, artifacts for Megaboss. I think the thing is, like, I look at the first one and I just think I would rather just have a 5-up ward save. So
the -2 move does it.
Yeah.
Does it in.
The +1 to hit I can get from a command point. I'd rather have my movement, and a 6-up ward I could just rather have a 5-up ward if I'm taking an artifact. The second one, though, Destroyer, I think that could be very nice on a Mega Boss. 3 damage on your Haka, 7 attacks, 3s and 3s. You give them +1 to hit, 2s and 3s, and then you give them Finest Hour, and now he's 2s and 2s, pop the wall, 2s and 2s, -2 rend, flat 3 damage.
3 damage. Yeah.
Just nasty. Yeah. And then the last one, if you take this, don't.
You made a mistake if you did.
You made a mistake. Go back, pick Destroyer, and then remake your list.
Yeah, go back and reread the other artifacts.
All right, spells. So Foot of Gork is what we're going to call new player trap. Because they're going to look at it and go, wow, this thing is amazing. I can do D6 more wounds and I roll a 4-up. And then you're like, oh, wait, that's a CV10.
Yeah.
And so I have to roll a 10 on 2 dice, which is like a 15% chance. And then I have to make sure that it doesn't get dispelled.
You may get it off once if you try to cast it every round in like a full game.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And by then, like, it's an 18-inch range. So what's in range? Who knows?
Yeah.
Is he still alive after it goes off or before it goes off? It's
Yeah.
you gotta be. You're gonna want to take it. It's gonna be like, ooh, this is cool flavor, but it's a trap. So be careful. Mighty Edbutt, uh, 1 mortal wound. If it's a wizard, D3, just take Arcane Bolt. I mean, it's just better here.
It's just better, yeah. Especially when you got teleport.
Right. I think the winner here is the Green Big Hand of Gork. CV7, pick a unit wholly within 12. Teleport them anywhere on the board, 9 inches away from an enemy. So not only do we now have Mighty Destroyer for 2 units or 3 units if you do it with a Megaboss, for free, and then 1 command point. But then also we could take another unit, send them all the way across the board, put them anywhere else we want. So you just need to figure that this army is going to be anywhere on the board they want to be at any point of the game.
Right. And with an objective-based game, a teleport is,
it's fantastic.
It's amazing. You can pass those up.
Yeah. And then I think your second probably include, if you've taken a second spell, is the Bash 'em Up Lads. That +1 to wound for Iron Josh units wholly within 16.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good thing. Basically try to give your one caster that you take. He takes the big Grid Hand of Gork, maybe give him an enhancement for a second spell. This is the second spell, and then he just runs behind your like brutes or something like that. So they have +1 to wound.
Yeah.
So, all right, next one. All right, clans. So the first one is very, I think, meh. It gives you a chance to charge with a unit in the enemy's charge phase. Meh. The Bloodtooth also. If you're running a lot of Gore Grunters, I could see it, maybe, but usually I don't think you need that extra mobility. Usually you've got plenty of mobility. There's no reason to take a clan for it. This last one, though, I think is the keeper here. Giving Violent Fury that extra +1 damage to 3 units instead of 1 units.
Yeah.
That is so good. So good. 2 units, just picture your cabbage, your 2 units of, 3 Gore Gruntas. You give them both +1, both Mighty Destroyer, pop your Wah, give them an extra Rend all the way across the table turn 1, and whatever they hit's going to die. It's just whether or not the opponent screened correctly. And, the thing is, you got to remember that's going across the table turn 1. If they kill a unit, they're going to pile in and attack again because of smashing and bashing. So you got to screen 4 inches or you're going to be, and sometimes 5s if they take the jagged hackers, because now they're 2-inch range on their melee profile. So you need to be ready to set a very nice screen up, or you're going to be very sorely in a bad place very quickly.
Yeah. Good choppers.
All right. Units of note, Megaboss on Maw Crusher. He's got more wounds now. He went from 16 wounds up to 18 wounds. You can get a 3+ save on him now with when he takes the weapon profile that gives him 7 attacks instead of 9. I don't know anybody who's going to take 2 extra attacks over a 3-up save. If you're doing that, you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. Yeah.
It's just a 3-up save now that you can make a 2-up save +1. Oh my goodness. It's so good. The Orc Megaboss. I don't want people to sleep on this guy. He gives you those extra command abilities, and he's a beat stick. I mean, he's cheap. He's 8 attacks, 3s, -1/+2. You can give him +1. He can take Finest Hour. Imagine him running beside a unit of brutes. He hits something. He's got 2. Now you pop. If he's turn 1 or turn 2, you pop your Wah. You do all of his buffs. He's 2s, -2 Rend. You give him another +1 from damage from the War Chanters, and then he's flat 3 damage. 3 damage. That guy is he will surprise some people if you're not ready for him.
Yeah, gonna do some damage.
Another big standout here, and I think it might catch some people off guard if they're not ready for it, is the brutes. They have an ability now that if they're on an objective and they're within 3 inches of a unit or a model with 1 wound, that unit no longer counts for holding that objective.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful because all of a sudden 5 brutes on an objective against like 20 models, they now own that objective if they're within range of you.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is Gore Grunters have definitely lost some value. They lost their +1 to hit and wound. They've lost some of their attacking. They're still good. It's just they're not as good as they once were. So I wouldn't say they're I would say, you put your cabbage in there, you put like a unit of Gore Grunters. I think there's list now has some more movement. You can take some brutes, you could take some Ard boys, and I still think that you're making the right choices instead of just filling your whole army with Gore Grunters.
Where they were auto include, that's how you build it. Now you got some choices. Fair enough. All right. Lastly, we got Big Wah.
Wah! Yes. All right, and I like to put Kragnos on here because if you're gonna include him in a list, you're gonna include him in a Big Wah.
Big Wah. Yep.
Strengths here also, they have some great mobility. They get Mighty Destroyers out of the Iron Jaws, so your cabbages are going to be across the table turn 1 if you want them to be. They have some great buffs because they have all of them. They have all the spell lores, so they can pick and choose the best of the best. They have extra attacks. That is a huge Wah. That's the original Wah. Extra attacks is so big, and throwing it to your entire army is going to be massive. And they have great shooting because they've got Cruel Boys.
Yep.
So
with the poison.
With the poison. So the weaknesses that you're seeing, in Bone Splitters and Iron Jaws, you just fill in with Cruel Boys, and now you've got a well-rounded force that's competitive at pretty much any level. All right. The weaknesses. So the weaknesses here is a slow ramp up to get these guys to where they should be. You're really going to want to wait till your wall points are around 20, something like that, before you really commit to some heavy engagements, because you want that +1 to hit. You want the +1 to wound. You want the pluses to charge. And so you might see, and it might shock some people because you've got that turn 1. You're used to Iron Jaws being in your face turn 1, where you might see a turn 1. He sits in his deployment. You might see a turn 2. He sits back in his deployment. Maybe he moves out a little bit and tries to pressure an objective a little bit. But the way that battle traits work and objective control, he doesn't really have to pressure you until like turn 3. But that's when he's coming for you. And when he comes, he's going to hit there. Oh yeah. So they need Wah points, and that's that kind of comes into that ramp up. They need the Wah points to really be on full cylinders. But once they're there, it's a wrecking machine. And then their last thing is they have limited ward saves. So the Bone Splitters still get their 6 up, but that's it. Unless it's on the war scroll, they're going to be very susceptible to mortal wound output. So, all right, next one. And I think some units of note here is definitely Godric. I didn't put him in the Iron Jaws one because I think he does best in Big Wah. If you think I'm going to put Godric in there, he's going to be sitting back anyways because I want him to sit back to get Wah points turn 1.
Yeah.
Then also I'm sitting next to my 3, bolt thrower boys, and my 3 units of those. All of a sudden, I get charged with something. Now I unleash hell. I get to unleash hell with all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And so I'm setting this big trap for you that says, "Come on, charge me." I'm sitting back, and all of a sudden, what that unit you charged with is now like, maybe it was a full strength. Now it's like a quarter of what it once was.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes into the next one, the Man Skewer Boys. I mean, that combo there is going to be deceptively strong, and people are not going to be ready for it. And I'm just saying, like, you're not going to be ready for it. It's coming.
Yeah.
If you see a Godric and those guys sitting next to each other, that's death waiting to happen.
Yeah. You don't want to get close to that.
No. And then lastly, Savage Orcs here. There's the reason I threw them in here, and I think some people might be controversial on this one, is so they went from having a 6-up save to a 5-up save. Doesn't make them great in Bone Splitters. It's just mostly because the Boar Boys are just so good, point value wise. But now that we start looking at Big Wah and the plus, and you can still take those -2 Ren spells from Bone Splitters, but we need some objective control.
Yeah.
And we need a line in front of our man skewers. And you can still take 30 Savage Orcs. They come in tens and they're battle line. So you're talking 60 wounds now on a 5-up base save. So now that you can pump them up with Mystic Shield or something else, give them a 4-up base. On top of that, you can give them they still have their 6-up ward save. And then all of your wall stuff is going into them. So normally their stickas are hitting 4s and 4s. Now they're 3s and 3s, and they're 2 attacks each, I think. Yeah. And I think that is, for a battle line unit that I want to just stick in front of my man skewers and never have them die. Yeah. That is a lot of 60 wounds on a unit.
You got to chew through a lot of wounds there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 60 wounds on a 4-up, 6-up. That is, that's going to be something to deal with. And especially because I'm throwing in a mega. So then you're like, what do you send your hammer to? Are you going to send it at my mega sitting on the objective? Or are you going to send it at my 60 wound Savage Orc sitting screening my man skewer bullet boys?
Trying to get to those bullet boys. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. All right. And I think that's it for what I've got.
I'm telling you, man, this I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
This book, I mean, it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, for me, it's one of those things where I was never a huge orc player before. I mean, I liked them, especially like the savage ones. But now I'm like, okay, it's not the worst taken.
Yeah, I was. So this book here is kind of bittersweet for me. And I say this from a very dedicated Bone Splitters player. I looked at Bone Splitters initially, and I was like, okay, they've lost everything that made them special, because what I was thinking of was Arrow Boys used to be so good. I was used to be shooting twice with extra attacks, 60 shots each, and upwards of like 120 shots in a turn. And I was just like, that's gone. This is over. My Bone Splitters, they didn't really get enough. The Savage Orcs aren't great. But then I'm like, you started looking at it some more, and it really it's just a shifted dynamic. It's now Boar Boys. It's just Boar Boy spam, and I think it's still competitive. I think it's strong. It's going to catch some people off guard. I think Iron Jaws, initially I was a little worried. They moved the Maw Crusher and Godric up to a 4-up save, and I thought that scared me.
Yeah.
But then they also gave Godric like an extra 4 or 5 wounds, and they gave the Maw Crusher an extra 3 wounds, and they gave the Maw Crusher ability to get a 3-up. And I was like, okay, so yeah, this has definitely got some wheels. And I think people who played these armies before and still love them, like I love my Bone Splitters, are going to come into this book. They're going to read through it. They're going to try these things out. And I think they're going to have a good time. I think they're going to have some great, I definitely think there's some counters, but I don't think that you're going to lose everything. I think everything in here, I think, is a very solid B+, maybe A tier. The only ones that I think might push out, I think there's some big wall lists that we might see some higher in play, like A+ tier.
Yeah, depending on what they can put together with that.
Exactly. Just thinking Godric with Man Skewer Bolt Boys, all 3 of them unleashing hell with a big blob of Savage Orcs, a Gatekeeper Gargant sitting on an object. I mean,
yeah,
it just screams to me, I've got the tools in the toolbox to win games. And that's what that list does. And that is going to be a very hard list to deal with.
And I like the Cruel Boys for a different way to play, something that takes a little more thought, a little more, strategy. You got some synergies that have to work out for that to pan out. And they got some great models. I love the way they look. Yeah. Just don't be tempted by, some of the name characters. I mean, obviously, Mouth of Gore, more definitely. But for when it comes to the Sludge Drake, just a regular guy on a Sludge Drake, just as good, and you can give him more stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I mean, all in all, I think out of the two, I think this book is the winner out of the two. I'm not a big Stormcast Eternals fan, but some of that stuff is a little overpriced. I mean, some of them, for what it does, I think they're way in love with armor saves, which so that kind of tends to affect the points value. But yeah, I mean, it's a great book all in all. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's going to do it for us, guys. We appreciate you tuning in and watching us here. If you listen to us later on wherever you listen to your podcasts, be sure to come over and check out the channel at the Grizzled War Master. Check out some of our past videos. Take a look at our pretty faces. You want to see what we look like. Otherwise, we'll be back again next week. Doug will be back, and we'll be discussing more Age of Sigmar. James, thanks for co-hosting with me today, going over this. I can't wait to play some of this.
Yeah, no problem. Pleasure. I can't wait either.
All right, guys. There's support links down below. So if you want to support the channel, things we do here. Otherwise, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll be back next week.